stand by the comments in that video?
The comment in the video were made at an academic conference. I was speaking off the cuff, and I basically spoke inappropriately, and I regret having made those comments.
But your point that you were making underneath the choice of words was actually quite nuanced. You were saying, essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, that due to political pressures, the language of Obamacare had to be somewhat opaque, somewhat lacking in transparency. Is that correct?
This is something we've seen going back actually through the Clinton and Bush presidencies, which is that public policy that involves spending is typically less politically palatable than policy that involves doing things through the tax code. It would have made more sense to do Obamacare the way we did in Massachusetts, which would be to just actually give people money to offset the cost of their health insurance. That was politically infeasible, and so instead it was done through the tax code, and that's the only point I was making.
Do you think that those pressures politically led to language in this law that affected sustainability adversely?
No, I don't. I think the pressures politically led to an incomplete law with some typos, which has led to this recent dramatic court case. But I don't think it really affects the sustainability.
Well, let's talk about that case. The Supreme Court just agreeing to hear that challenge to Obamacare, specifically based on this ambiguity of the law, it seems. This issue in this case is whether the federal Obamacare exchange, not just the state-run ones, can offer tax credits to low-income Americans. Do you think the somewhat tortured language of the bill opened it up to these legal attacks?
It's not really tortured language. It's just a typo. I mean, basically, remember, this law, the law that passed was essentially the Senate version. It was supposed to go to conference, and then when Scott Brown got elected, the Democrats didn't have the votes to put it through conference. They had to basically pass the Senate version, which had basically typos in it. And this is a typo. It's, first of all, not entirely clear if you look at the language what actually it means. One way to read it is that states with federal exchanges can't give subsidies. Another way to read it is that they can. But it's blatantly clear through the interpretation of the law that Congress completely intended these subsidies to be available to all the states.
So this is largely about the ambiguity of language. We'll be watching closely to see whether the Supreme Court errs on the side of what's in the text or the intentions you're ascribing to it.